Hey guys, Nightfall here, just bringing you a little guide on how to pull quarter stars. Now, just a little disclaimer at the start of this, because I've been sick and haven't been running keys, most of the recordings you're going to see in these videos are going to be from Tomb of Sargeras times, so you're going to see we have like 5 million health and we're doing a 23. I mean, it doesn't really change anything in how you want to pull the dungeon. Now, when you get up here to the first guard, you're going to want to do whatever you can to skip them. If you can't skip them, well, you're going to have to pull them and pull them up to the rest, but if you can, you want to Repentance, or Imprison, or there's a little sheep trick with Mage. You can also sap him, but you're gonna want to try and skip him if you can, because just with any dungeon, pulling a single mob by himself, especially one with a lot of health like a guard, is a huge waste of time. Now when you get to the top, you're gonna get your sentry. Everyone pulls a sentry. What's different than what most people do is you're going to want to pull every sentry in the entire dungeon, because each sentry gives as much percent as a guard, but falls over in like 2 or 3 hits. These sentries give 2.5% each, and there's 5 sentries in the dungeon. That means you get 12.5%, 1/8 of your entire dungeon percentage, just from killing sentries. You're going to absolutely want to make sure you pull all 5 sentries in this dungeon. Something you're definitely going to want to do is you're going to want to pull the dock. Now, as you can see, we did this later in the dungeon as I skipped ahead, but you can do it right after your first 2 sentries. So when you come down here, you're going to get 18% if it's not teaming. 18%. And the only new mob you have to deal with is an Arcanist. The Arcanist has 2 abilities it casts, Seal Magic and Nightfall Orb. You gotta interrupt both. Make sure you have an interrupt order, because if either one goes off, it can easily wipe your group. But other than that, you can just AoE him down. You know, if it's fortified, especially high fortified, you might want to lust here. You might not. You might want to rush to the boss, get the lust on the boss. But that's up to your group to decide. But this is absolutely a huge amount of percent in very little time. You definitely want to pull the dock. Now, whether you just pulled the dock or you're saving it for later, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to jump over this river here. And what you definitely don't want to do is pull any constructs whatsoever. Just like with the guards, pulling construct you see on the left or the construct you see on the right, pulling one huge mob by itself in any dungeon is a massive waste of time. Instead, what you can do is, since it's not bolstering, it's not bursting, we can pull everything here. You might want to go a little slower on bolstering and bursting, but you pull everything in. Then, to get past these constructs and the patrols, simply just jump over this here. Now watch out if you have certain trinkets that AoE, you have maybe a legendary that causes things to jump to new targets, or if you have pets, you're going to want to be avoiding those here, because they can easily pull things to your left or right and wipe you. Now up here, you have your option: do you have the orb or do you not have the orb for engineering? Now if you have the engineering orb, it makes your life a lot easier. It's one of the better things to get. Now it's exclusive with the blacksmithing trap, and that I think is a little bit better, but to get the orb is still pretty good. Now with this cat, you're going to want to stun it midair or knock it back, because if the cat lands on someone, especially someone wearing cloth, it can pretty easily kill them. Now if you're far away from it, you can actually sidestep the cat and take no damage whatsoever. This here is a quick clip from a different Court of Stars, because in the other one, we got the Construct Orb, so we didn't do the skip. As you can see, you don't want to pull this pack here, it's a waste of time. You just run down that center step. You gotta hug the right, then run down the center step, and you'll be able to skip that pack. But remember, that pack's still up. So if you don't want to run into troubles, don't accidentally backpedal into that pack of mobs. One neat thing you can do if you get the Construct Orb, if it's not bolstering, I repeat, if it's not bolstering, you can pull this pack of mobs into the boss, lust, and AoE them down. Now if you use lust on the dock, you can't lust, it's still worth it to pull these into the boss. Now be careful on Sanguine though, because on Sanguine, this boss has a lot of casts where he likes to stand still. If he stands still for 10 seconds in a puddle of Sanguine, you're restarting the fight basically. But if you're really careful, make sure they die off of him, or if it's not Sanguine and not bolstering, you're going to be absolutely fine. Easy, quick percentage. AoEing down mobs with the boss is always great if you can do it. Now if you want, you can pick up some easy percent here with this guard and the worms. Again, if it's bolstering, maybe you don't want to pull this, but even then you can handle it pretty well, and it's definitely some easy percent. You really want to avoid pulling as much at the end of the dungeon as you possibly can, so this is some very easy percent that you can pick up right here. Now, as you may have seen, our druid just ran off, and what's going to happen is our druid's actually going to stealth through all the way to the other side, and what that does is it triggers the door back at the front, where you're released when you die. It's going to trigger that to open. And what you want to do is you want to take your group and you want to go back and go to that door. Now, if it's a druid or rogue, someone stealthing through, they can go around, meet up with you, maybe even pick up some of the buffs on the way there. If that's not the case, you can use someone who can CC the construct up there and have them run by and then just suicide and meet you back where they release when they respawn. So now that you worked your way back to the front, if you got the construct orb, you can start DPSing these constructs. They're great percent because they don't do anything anymore, but you don't want to sit around DPSing them too long. If they're not, construct orbed, you're not going to hit them. You don't want to fight 3 actual constructs that are actually fighting back. So just leave them be and get percent elsewhere if you don't have the construct orb. If you have the orb, just wait for your 5th player to get back, whoever went ahead and opened it. Then stop attacking them, drop your combat. What you're going to want to do next is you're going to want to pull those imps once everyone is ready. Now you got to be careful because there's that patrol of 2 right there, and it's 4 on teaming. And on teaming, you really don't want to pull it as a 4-pack with 2 Inquisitors, but you kind of want to wait for them to go by. You can do things like root it so it stays out of your way while you fight imps, and you're going to see that on the next pass, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull these imps. When pulling the imps, just be very, very careful, because if you screw up and you overlap your AoE CCs, your AoE stuns, interrupt silences, you're going to have a bad time when they all cast at once. You're going to wipe, people are going to die, it's going to be bad. Just be very careful. They're easy to nuke down, though. Now, how you go through here is going to be really heavily based on what things you find around that you can use, what professions you have, what things spawned. And, if you got a blacksmithing trap, you always want to use it on the 2nd mini-boss, because he is absolutely the worst. As you can see, we don't have a blacksmithing trap, because in this run, we got our construct orb. They're mutually exclusive. So we go ahead and we pull that enforcer with Imakacha, because Imakacha does nothing. You want to pull trash with her, you want to pull enforcers with her. Now just make sure if you pull an enforcer with her, first you're dodging these at a corner. You don't want to be hit by the explosion, but also you're gonna wanna make sure that Imakacha dies at least at the same time, if not before the Enforcer, because you don't want a 2nd mini-boss coming around the corner and buffing Imakacha up to double health, double damage, whatever. Or actually, I guess it's triple. I don't know, because I don't ever make that mistake anymore. So I've completely forgotten how much the buff is. But it's bad if you get 2 at once. Now again, if you have a blacksmithing trap, remember, only use it on the 2nd mini-boss. He is absolutely by far the worst. Now, when you go to face off against this 2nd mini-boss, you kind of want to do it at a doorway or at a corner, because what you're going to want to do is he has his drain ability, but has a cast before the drain. So what you're going to want to try to do is you're going to want to try to LOS it. Now, obviously, we didn't get there, but, you can go into that doorway that's across from where you see, or you can do it in a doorway over there. Also, remember, don't ever bring an Enforcer back here, because they changed it. If you bring an Enforcer back into this area, she won't call a mini-boss. So what you're going to want to do with this, try and LOS it. He was able to invis it. But you try and LOS it in a doorway, not really getting a good idea of what's going on here. And you're just going to want to get it to drop onto the tank, because he's going to keep trying to recast it every time you dodge it. So every time you dodge it, just keep dodging it until it goes on the tank, and it's actually going to go a lot faster. We're screwing it up here, so this is more of what not to do. But we kind of wanted to bring him back here so we could finish off these constructs, because we didn't do the constructs with Imakacha, which is a good option if you have the construct orb to bring Imakacha back onto these 3 constructs and AoE him down. But we decided we'd do the Enforcer instead, AoE them down with this guy. Probably a mistake. But you see, we're getting some of them to drop onto the tank. Not all of them, but some of them are dropping onto the tank, which means all of our DPS are doing full damage. When it comes to the 3rd mini-boss, he really does nothing, so if you still need percent, it's a pretty good idea to maybe pull him with some trash. I don't think we did that here, but maybe pull him with a little bit of trash. An easy pack here or there, because as long as you're not standing in front of him, he does nothing. He does absolutely nothing. It's great to cleave things down. Now, obviously, if it's bolstering, you don't want to bolster the mini-boss, so you might want to avoid pulling trash with him, just like you might want to avoid pulling some trash with Imakacha on bolstering. But with this guy, it's just like Imakacha. Does nothing. Just don't stand in front of him, pull trash with him, easy percent. Now you can see we're low on percent, but that's because in this run, we go back and we go and get that 18% at the front with the dock pull. Now, going into the 2nd boss, you may want to lust her, especially if you have lust up, and you can bum rush her in certain cases, and basically just rush to her through the mini-bosses as fast as you possibly can. You generally do that on a tyrannical key, just so you definitely get lust on her and don't waste too much time with your lust off cooldown. And really, with her, just make sure you have your kicks going, make sure you're not standing in imps, call your AoE CC, interrupts, silences, whatever. Just don't get the imps to cast, and just slowly move as a group. Everyone knows how to do this. Well, not everyone, but most people know how to do this by now. Now, if you're not quite at 100%, here we were, but if you're not quite at 100%, you can send one person in to do the clues, and you can send the other 4 back to get a little bit of percent. This will help you go a little bit faster, because having one person get the clues, they can have all the clues done by the time the 4 people get back, and the 4 people don't need that 5th person to kill, 1 or 2 mobs just to get the last few percent. This mini-boss is really straightforward, but I just wanted to touch on one thing really quick. Not a lot of people seem to know this, especially, the average person who doesn't run a lot of Mythic Plus, is this Shadow Bolt volley that he does that leaves a damage taken increase on all of you. It actually is designed so that the next wave will hit about 0.1 seconds after the debuff falls off. But if you end up moving forward in between volleys, what will actually happen is your debuff won't be off by the next time the Shadow Bolts hit you, and you could easily just get one shot. So if anything, you want to slowly move yourself away from the boss, but definitely don't ever move forward. So, the final boss, last of it all. This guy is fairly easy. He is a bit healing intensive. If you want, you can toss on some avoidance gear. It definitely reduces the damage that you take from his abilities by a lot. Now for this guy, don't worry about the first 2 slicing maelstroms because they do low damage. Just make sure you're not standing near an image, because if you're standing on an image, you take double damage. But once 3rd and up maelstrom hits, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever, he's doing maximum damage with it because he's got enough images out. And what's going to happen is you're going to want to start rotating in cooldowns. Have your healer call when they're using their raid-wide cooldowns because you don't want to overlap them. And other than that, just stay alive. Don't stand in stupid stuff. Keep yourself alive during that. If you're taking way too much damage, toss on some avoidance gear, toss on a Pride As. But other than that, this guy is mostly a tank and spank. Just dodge a little crap on the ground and you're done. This boss, one of the easiest bosses in the game, just does a lot of AoE damage. And there you have it. That's how to pull quarter stars. Now this one, I couldn't go into an exact you pull this, then this, then this, because quarter stars is a really variable key. Every time you go in, it's going to be a little bit different because you get different buffs, get different spawn locations, different affixes make you pull things a lot differently. I tried to touch on them as much as I could, but overall, these are just the important things to remember in quarter stars, and they should get you through some pretty high keys. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be putting out one on every single dungeon eventually as I get to it. But that's all for now. Take care, guys.